Yes. Mr. Lieutenant, she's ready to roll.
Okay.
And you may want to announce that we've already called it to order and the invocation and done that.
And if anything's wrong, it's Dan's fault.
Yeah, let's blame me.
Okay, you ready to go? Or-
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to proceed. We've had the call to order, we've done the invocation and the pledges. And now we're recording as we should be. Has everyone had a chance to consider the minutes of May 7th?
Yes.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Citizen comments on non-agenda items. Any member of the public may address the ODC board regarding any of its agenda items before or during the consideration of the item. We're going to go on. What? I didn't see him. No, I saw Aaron, but I didn't see him. Okay. All right, we're going to go to the contractors' reports. Tom?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I guess you can.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We didn't have
Okay. Hello. Let's get it started. First, I wanted to start off. We got a lot of things going on with the Economic Development Office. That is your contractor. Hopefully, you're happy with us. We're happy with y'all. One thing I did want to announce: Tracy Jones. I think most all of y'all know her. Tracy announced her retirement recently after 30 years. Working in economic development with the chamber, and so we wish her the very best. She says she's going to do some traveling and spend a lot more time with her grandkids. But with that, it was a good time to look at ourselves and what we want to address heavily. Working with information, I try to meet with y'all as much as possible individually. I need to get with you soon, Blake. We talked about it a couple of years ago, have actually budgeted for it, but we never have fulfilled the workforce development specialist position that we really need. I mean, that's a pressing issue, and it affects us every day, working to link education, workforce training, all of the above, our BR&E visits, things of that nature. And so we've got a new BR&E specialist coming on board and a new workforce development specialist. I will mention first the BR&E specialist, MJ Martinez. Would you stand, MJ? She joined us. Monday was her first day, so please don't quiz her. But in a minute, I'm going to hand you a report regarding Project Phoenix and the incentives that went out on that project with the state of Oklahoma, and MJ actually put that together for us. I called her in. I said, I'm looking for a report like this, and gave limited instruction, and she came back and did more than what I was asking. And so I was excited about that. She comes with a number of years' experience with the Governor's Office of Economic Development in Austin, and also with the Governor's Office working on contracts and things with Workforce Solutions. And so checked with some of my friends in that office, and she was highly regarded. She made her way up here to Odessa to help her daughter, son-in-law, in dealing with their grandkids when COVID started. So she actually retired from the governor's office in 19 or 20? 19. And then came up here, and we were fortunate. She put in for a position, and we grabbed her. So we're excited. And then on the 30th of this month, we're going to have a new face at the Chamber working on workforce development. I think most of y'all may know her. Her name is Monica Schauner. She's the former director of Discover Odessa. Used to be at the Chamber, knows our environment and likes it a lot. And we had an opportunity to try to get her back over, and we jumped at it. And so we're excited. She'll start Monday, June 30th. And so we're going to reach out and do a lot more on workforce development, working with our higher ed institutions, working with Ector County ISD and their CTE program and what have you. and also trying to link employers' needs to training and whatever else we can do to affect workforce. So we're excited about that, and knows we'll actually, with her starting, hopefully we can get some things done sooner than later. We're putting a much greater emphasis on our business retention and expansion visits moving forward, working with MJ and also working with Monica to get more data. We haven't been as good as we should be as far as collecting data. How do we utilize that data? And then providing that data to y'all when you're having your workshops and things of that nature, and you're talking about what ODC can do to improve economic development, jobs, CapEx, everything else within Odessa and Ector County. So we hope to bring that information forward to you, and it's something y'all can utilize, you know. And I know there's discussions of having more meetings with council and things of that nature, and so we want to provide y'all with the best information possible to utilize moving forward in all those discussions. And so with that, you will find my packet in there, or our packet. I'm not going to go through everything. We did slim it down. A couple of reasons. There were a number of projects that had just been hanging in there for months and months. And so the actual projects you will find in there, and there's only about 8 of them. It's not all that we're working on, but these are actually projects that we have had movement on in the last 30 days. And so that's why they're in the packet. I think, Ronnie, I mentioned you, or I heard you mention Whiptail, and you said that's quite interesting. That we talk to them or meet with them, Zoom call. We put together a meeting with them and somebody else almost daily now. That is estimated from their plans they sent us, and we're under NDA on that, but there are things I can share. It's a projected $13.9 billion CapEx. That would be the largest, I think, ever in Ector County. 2,000 FTEs, and it would be a 2-phase project that would incorporate a data center and a manufacturing facility. And so the one problem we're trying to work with, I was just in a meeting before this meeting with a number of members of city staff, including the new city manager. Obviously out here is water. And data centers use a lot of water. Most of it's for cooling. They're not a huge employer, but they're a big investment, and they use pretty good amount of water. They have to stay cool because it's a gigantic server room. And so the projects we're talking about are they're going to incorporate buildings in excess of 1 million square feet, if you can imagine that. And then you have to cool it. Don't really have to heat it. You have to just keep it cool because there's a lot of servers in there. That one's moving forward. The other one that's really moving quickly, and you'll see that on there, and it's a second item, is Project Thunderstorm. That CapEx is wrong. That was our first discussion with them. I think that was a guess on their part, and I just noticed we should have changed that, and we didn't. You can draw a line through that. That CapEx is now at $8 billion. So as you can see, that's way wrong. But that is moving forward. They have an LOI on 2 pieces of property adjoining each other, just outside city limits here. So we're moving forward with that. They're actually working with Grow Odessa in addition to our office, and I talk to them typically daily. They're lining up these projects require a hyperscaler partner. Usually that's someone like an example of that would be Google, Meta, people like that. This group actually are in deep negotiations with 3 different hyperscalers right now, and that's part of the reason the project's moving so fast, because once you garner that interest from the hyperscaler, the project really starts to take off. And so those are the ones probably I wanted to mention the most. You'll see Project Safe. That's actually American Safety Service, and Brian Green with compliance is going to be up here to present that to y'all for consideration today's agenda. So we're excited about that. We don't have the BRE visits right now. We're in a little bit of a flux. We're realigning that and going to set new goals for how we go about that and bringing y'all data. But you will have information on that very next meeting in July. And then you'll see some of our partner visits and And after that, you'll see the economic indicators. Happy anytime if you have a question about any of that information. If you don't ask it here, but the question comes up later, please call me. Feel free to do so. With that, if there's no questions on the handout report, I'll get into Project Phoenix and hand out their incentive information. Phoenix, for those of you who remember, it came down after initially 496 sites in North America. When they came here for their final site visit, it was down to 2, us and one other that they wouldn't tell us. When they made their big announcement about a month ago, we found out that that site was outside of Tulsa, at the port of Tulsa. And so Mr. Boutin asked me to give a report on incentives that were provided and then also compare them to what Texas had on the table. The problem we found out, and MJ can verify that, is we can't get Texas offer because it wasn't agreed upon, and it doesn't become public until it's signed and agreed upon. So if you don't land it, you don't get to see everything they were putting on the table. And so I can give you a speculation of what I think the offer might have totaled out to, which I will in a minute. And this kind of just itemizes them, the numbers, if you want to take them and pass them down. And so I'll be happy to go over these a little bit with you. Oh, there's one more item, and I didn't ask MJ to pull it up till the last minute because I forgot about it, but I remember David mentioned something on electricity. And so that's not in the list of things I gave you, but here's what they also received with regards to electricity in the state of Oklahoma. The parties negotiating and agreeing in good faith a power solution framework based on a special rate offer from the Public Service Company of Oklahoma, inclusive of a bond credit on generation on the parties negotiating and agreeing in good faith a power solution framework based on a special rate and offer. I've got duplicated. But basically what that did is it capped their electricity bill at $16 million annually. And I can tell you when we were meeting with them, with the project and Encore, it looked like their bill here was going to be between $40 and $44 million annually, potentially. I think it was going to start out at the beginning at $4 million a month, which was still going to be more than what Oklahoma was doing. And so, in addition,
my recollection on that too, didn't it say that that was going to be in perpetuity?
that was a number of these incentives are essentially in perpetuity. You see down there. I mean, they really wanted this thing. When you look at the various items they put on here, starting off the top bullet point, the Reindustrialize Oklahoma Act, a rebate program. Some of the tax exemptions and offsets, what you see here, which present high numbers, also is because Oklahoma does a personal income tax, and so they do it through that. We did that. I spent 6 years, only 6 years, I'm a Texas native, but 6 years in Arkansas, and probably the biggest incentive you would see the state put on the table were tax exemptions and rebates from the personal income tax, and so they would kick it back to the employer through the incentive program in those states.
So is the sales tax exemption on the purchase of 186 million of equipment, or what? I don't understand exactly what you're saying.
Which one are you looking at?
You were just talking about the sales tax exemption.
They
on
do,
machinery and
which
equipment.
Texas also does a sales tax rebate on purchases for the manufacturing process and things of that nature. So on the sales tax, yeah, Texas does do that. On your income tax rebates and exemptions, that's something we don't do a state income tax here, so Texas doesn't offer that. But you know, as you can see, when you combine the numbers, you're talking over $750 million. And I would speculate when you include everything, you know, we had kind of gone around and gotten the temperature of various taxing entities, ODC board, what we think we could have put in front of the board for an official vote, and we didn't do that, and all the other taxing entities, and then including the state, I would estimate that a total package, if we had have landed them, would have been between $225 million and $250 million. And that also includes when you do the property tax abatements on a 10-year abatement. I had discussed that with the various entities, and when you put a number to what they were requesting as far as an abatement, and drew that out, including the school district, we're thinking it was, the package might have totaled both locally and state, $250 million. And that's still, 500 million short of Oklahoma. So, I will, and this is just from 30 years of experience. I think there was also a little bit of work with the consulting firm to bid the two sites against each other, obviously to get each other's offer up. They were willing to take that and go much further than we were. But then again, we're Texas. We shouldn't have to.
So was their offer the total of all of these?
Yeah.
Because that's way more than.
That's why we can get those numbers now, because that's public information, because it's all part of what they've received.
Yeah,
So it's like $2 billion.
that's way more than what you just said, is why I asked that you said they did.
Well, initially, I guess I was looking at the hard numbers. Initially, what was pulled up, we were coming with 750, but it kept climbing. Obviously, it's higher than that. But I mean, at any level, we weren't in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could at least carve out the loan component and everything. It's at least $1 billion. Looks like.
So how long before Oklahoma breaks even?
A good question. Especially when some of them just go on forever, some of their incentives. And so, usually on ours, we can give kind of an ROI on a, whether that's 8 years, 10 years, what have you. It can get a little more difficult when you factor in the abatements, but yeah, they decided we're going to get this one, and they did.
Okay, 2 questions. Does Tulsa have an economic development corporation similar to ODC?
They do theirs through their Chamber of Commerce, Tulsa Chamber,
Okay.
Tulsa Regional Chamber, I think, or whatever.
So when this says the business expansion incentive program, typically $5 million or more, that's where that's coming from? I'm looking at your next to the last bullet point. I'm trying to get a feel for, we were talking about a range.
Well, when you see how they worded it online, that's an Oklahoma program, so I'm assuming that's state.
Okay.
Now, the Tulsa raises, I know, and I've known him for years, Mike Neal is their CEO, real good guy. They do a big economic development campaign through an economic development 501c6 that's under the chamber umbrella. So they raise a lot of private funds so that they can utilize those funds in addition to any state monies to bring in programs. And if it's kind of like, we had a similar program when I was in Fort Smith, Arkansas. We didn't have a sales tax. We raised private funds through economic development campaigns. And, it's not like you have to go through the process ODC does, because it's set up through state statute. We had a 5-member economic development executive committee meet, and I would pitch the plan directly to them. You didn't have to do the public meetings and everything like that, because it was all private funds raised relatively locally, but I think some of them came from around the state and in Oklahoma.
Okay, so do you think that the state of Texas was entertaining or negotiating or talking to them about some type of a loan program?
I think there was some talk about a loan program. I think one of the things that hurt was the way they wrote the new Jedi law that replaced the 313. And this is a law that enables the school district to participate in property tax abatement, and then the state essentially covers their commitment. The way the pay level related to what was the average scale level here in Odessa for these types of jobs, when you list them as manufacturing, they didn't qualify for that particular incentive, and that became an issue.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to get my head wrapped around here, I understand the magnitude of these dollars, this was a significant package that, at least at this point, they've agreed to. But how do we compare this, and again, maybe your best guess with regard to what the state of Texas was offering, and then how would we compare any offering that might have come from ODC to what Tulsa did? How do we get, I'm trying to get these apples and apples.
I would think at the local level, we at least matched, if probably more than what Tulsa was going to be able to do locally.
Okay.
Is that on here somewhere?
That is not on here, the local incentives. Because they're private funds, they don't necessarily have to make that public information. So there's probably additional dollars that were brought to them for an incentive program that weren't these were all state things that once it became signed and agreed and the governor signed off on it, it became public information and you could go online and compile it all. And that's what MJ did.
So I'm gonna try to shortcut this a
Yeah.
little bit. Locally, there isn't any way that we were gonna, I mean, basically, for all practical purposes, we've got about $50 million in uncommitted funds. We would, I would think it'd been very unlikely that we would have offered all of that.
I don't think the number I kind of kicked around, touched, moving to that number you just mentioned, I don't think that was gonna change
Yeah, it wasn't
anything.
gonna happen, but $50 million pales in comparison to this.
Yeah.
So can you speculate on what the Texas, at least what they were talking about was? I know they didn't make a formal offer.
There were several different programs on the table, including dollars for training, hiring assistants. I'm trying to remember everything that was discussed. Governor's closing fund, potentially.
If you had to guess, what do you think that total package would have looked like, dollars? Just to guess.
State alone,
Yes.
25 to 50, maybe a little more. The big thing was the 10-year abatement. If you do when you do the math on that and draw it out. Now, if they, and we included in that math the school district at the time. We didn't realize until after the fact when we were told that the state had determined, due to one clause in the new jetty legislation, that they may not have qualified for the school tax abatement. And that probably would have, in the end, killed us anyways.
So do you have a feel for the 10-year abatement total dollars? What that would have been?
For the school district alone?
No, for the entire, the whole thing. I'm trying to.
For the whole thing, I'm trying to remember the
understand
math,
what
but
that
it was
total
over
package-
$100 million.
Okay. So even if, let's just say we committed half of our reserve funds, that's $25 million, and let's say that was better than what they did, and the state had a package of $100 million, let's just call it, let's double it, call it $200 million. So, we're looking at the high side of $250 million package is what it sounds like to me. And if you just take out their loan program, this is $1 billion
Yeah.
that they offer. So that's where I'm trying to
Yeah.
get to. How close, well, we probably weren't even 25% of what this package is.
Correct. And also, there's other issues that we can only speculate on. When you see the pictures of the site they're going to on the port there, outside of Tulsa, it's a developed, ready site. Whereas, they brought up the issue, we had some more homework to do with our site. The former Nacero site is what we proposed. And it was offered at no cost to the prospect. But, you know, there were some easement issues, or a couple of flow lines in there we're gonna have to remove.
The costs associated with that are just,
They're-
they're incidental.
No, the cost was minimal, but they brought up
Yeah.
the headache of having to make sure it gets done. And obviously they were gonna want us to do it, so.
Do we, Tom, when somebody is, you're meeting with these people all the time, I mean, there's a couple of projects you're working on that would just be super home runs, and they're big investments on their part. Do you interact with the state? Does the state come down and meet them, or are all we're able to do is just offer what ODC and Odessa can do?
Usually I ask them if they, on projects that have a B behind them, I'm gonna put them in front of the state. Now, on a rare occasion, they've already approached the state first. Well, not rare, maybe it's 50-50. Phoenix approached the state first, and then the state reached out to the locals. Thunderstorm and Whiptail came to our office first. You know, part of it, we try to get our name out there. We market, trade shows, the work that Christy and her team does. Both those two came to us first, and then we recommend to them. We try to set up a meeting, go down, typically, we can do it in a day, sometimes 2 days. We'll meet with the governor's office, describe the program to them, and then we'll try, while we're there, to schedule a meeting with TCEQ to go over there and talk about any air permitting and things of that nature. And so, you know, we try to hold their hand through everything and just wherever they need to go. We met with a project today. You know, the first question is, where are you at? Do you have a piece of property? Have you identified where you want to go? It was kind of a different proposal. So really, by the end of it, I actually said, what's your ask here? And so they said, we want community support. And I said, are you talking financial? And they said, no, we want to know if this is something you can get behind. You know, would it cause Odessans headaches to put this type of deal here, and would it interrupt workflow with oil and gas? And I said, what I've seen today, I don't believe so.
So, I guess I'm just trying to be sure I understand, you know, what we contribute to these projects in terms of dollars to an $8 billion project is not
minuscule.
very much. I mean, it's not very much. I mean, are there things that you do, or that we can do, or that we need to help do better that adds value to what we do? I mean, I know you're talking to all of these people and putting them together, but I'm just wondering if I guess I'm just wondering if there's any way we can facilitate what the state does, or anything like that, to just increase our chances, because this is great that you gave us this, because it appears to me that what we give from Odessa Development Corporation wouldn't have made any difference.
Well, I can tell you, as long as I've been doing this for this many jobs and this investment, I've not seen a package this big.
Well,
This is,
Yeah, and I think, Peggy, in my mind, what we do here is important. The grants that we provide are important, and sometimes they are minuscule compared to what the capital investment is. That's why it's so important that we have a reasonable, and in some cases aggressive, tax abatement program with all the taxing entities. And I think what we probably need to support whenever we get the opportunity is with the taxing entities, that these tax abatements are really important to winning these deals.
well, and it may not
That's
hurt.
the kind of thing I'm talking about. Are there things we can do to?
It may not hurt to bring that up in the partnership meeting on the 24th. A couple of our entities are, and I understand, you know, I understand their issues. They're becoming more difficult to bring to the table. Matter of fact, I had to reach out to a project last week and say that this one entity is just flat not going to participate.
Yeah, and we've been through this before. I think a lot of times you have elected officials who are operating under the assumption that they're going to get that money. Capital investment, we need to be in the tax abatement game. And so that's something we can do, and I certainly can carry that message at the Odessa Partnership meeting.
And most of these projects that we're talking about, the big ones, simply due to land needs and what have you, they're outside the city, and what's being proposed is a raw site. So they're not really generating any revenue right now. They're, ag exemption, what have you. But we're talking about something, and typically, and what these people, we agreed to in principle, if they were to accept the offer Phoenix was, there were going to be, on the front end, 100% abatement for some of this stuff. But on the back end of the 10 years, the back 50%, you were going to generate a lot of revenue because that wasn't going to be a full 100%. And so, it's just the people who are serious about this and play this game, they will jump in on that.
That's a really good question, and we need to make sure that we are, that needs to be kept in the forefront with regard to these taxing entities, and in some cases, some newly elected officials, that they need to understand the economic development game. That's one of our major tools that we can use to win these projects.
And I'm happy if you want to call me. I'll tell you the entities that really aren't interested right now in playing
I think we'll figure it out.
the game.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it's important for us to understand we have a whole lot of non-monetary advantages for somebody to come here. We've got some land sites that are big enough that they need. We've got natural gas. I mean, there are a lot of positive things that we have that don't show up on this. And, sometime when you have a chance, I'd like you to just kind of articulate those on, the things that you tell people that really are not just the money we can give from ODC, but the driving forces of why either of these two big billion-dollar projects would want to come here. What can we offer them that maybe somebody else cannot? Because it's clear to me from looking at this, it's not just a financial thing, it's a lot more.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm asking for some education.
well, and I'll mention briefly, some of it is also how they feel when they come into the community, the acceptance and everything. I mean, it's important because you're going to be sending people here, management people and others. You don't get as much of that with some site selectors. If a company hires a consultant, the two that we're still working here mentioned, High Dollar, Whiptail, and Thunderstorm, they're not utilizing a consultant. So I've already put them in front of numerous
So you've
people.
got a lot more control over getting information.
There's a lot of control, flexibility, and a consultant, and I think they still get paid the same as they used to, but basically they package up every single dollar they saved you. And as you can see, they saved them a lot of money here. When you add up the value of an incentive package, and then that consulting firm gets a percentage of that. And so they sometimes can steer the ship, and of course, really, technically, that's kind of what they're being hired for. But, if they like that site or they like that incentive package a lot better, even if, long-term, 30 years, and they were talking 30 at our dinner, 30, 40 years, long-term, it might be better here. On the front end, sometimes that's where a consultant's going to steer them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Any questions? One item.
Yeah.
I know that you are producing and keeping up to date a spreadsheet that shows all of the incentives that we've paid, and I'm talking about typical incentives that we've paid to create jobs and capital investment and whatnot. And that you're keeping that up to date. You'll provide that to us.
Past projects.
At some
Yeah.
point, you know. With regard to the facade and infrastructure grants, can we create something, like, can we go back and find out, you know, what we paid and, you know, what, if those businesses are still in business, did they do the work and all that kind of stuff? Is there some way to create?
We've got a little bit of that. I don't know, in talking to Elizabeth Preto, I'm not sure how well that, or how far back it goes during some leadership changes when it was under the city with DOI. And Tina, you may know, do you know if there's good record keeping here?
I don't.
Okay. I'm not sure we have all that, but we can try
Yeah,
to.
look at that and see if you can provide something, because I think, you know, now we've added some territory with regard to going down Grant Street to the interstate and whatnot. And I think it sure would be good to know if that program is still viable, you know, how good has it done, how many properties did we affect, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So if you'd look at putting something together like that, I think it would be valuable for us in the future.
Can I do that after budget?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one comment, because this economic stuff is really, I say stuff, you know, is there really a good history on, we're talking about giving somebody something for 30 years. Is there something that can be brought out that we look at, kind of like what David's saying? What were the effects of the first, let's pick the first one, first economic development grant that was ever given by this group, by the city of Odessa? Where is it now, and did it ever stay? And did the money
We've
come
got
back?
on
The
the-
tax revenues come back into the
On
community?
on the downtown
Always
side,
like
we
a
don't
good
have a
head
good
for asking
list,
this
but
kind
we've
of
got a
question.
pretty good list going back to the first project,
Yeah,
how much they received. I mean, there are some projects in there, it says closed.
oh, I know. there are a
You
lot
know,
of
the
others.
call
I mean,
center by
there
the
isn't any
mall,
business.
things of that nature, which no one incentivizes call centers anymore.
No.
But we've got a good list of the ODC projects going back to the beginning.
Yeah, well, maybe after, after budget, can we see that too?
Yeah,
So this
It's
kind
pretty, it's pretty phenomenal that the tax abatements we gave, like for those power plants for 5 years or 10 years, and then how much is on the tax rolls now?
yeah, that's the point, or would be
We've
beneficial.
multiplied our tax base, I don't know how many times.
Yeah,
By giving that away up front,
right,
we've more than made it up.
yeah, that's what I
the,
want
Which
to,
is why we
the
have
ad
to keep
valorem, the
reminding
property
you.
values, or the jump
right,
in that is enormous, yeah.
yeah, because the number one thing you'll get from the average everyday guy that's in business, well, where's my tax abatement?
Yeah.
When you put that to the public, that's what they're gonna say, well, where's mine?
But if you're out there and you got raw land that's
Oh,
on.
I agree with you,
ag-
I'm not saying I'm against it, I just like to
A
see.
lot of people don't understand, if you got ag exemption raw land out there that's not getting any tax
Nothing.
base,
Right,
and you turn it into a major construction project, and you go ahead and give them tax relief for 10 years, you really hadn't given anything away.
no,
Because you didn't have
Because
it
you never
anyway.
They never had it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then when you get it, it's like, it's down the road, you gotta look down the road.
Yeah, that's look at this.
And we've done it really well, and we used to have some really good numbers.
Yeah, we still do.
We've got a spreadsheet with all that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, current media partners, Christie?
Good afternoon. All right, first of all, I think I mentioned this, but it was brief last month, but we've condensed our report. It's more of a summary with links to all of the backup. So I'm hoping that will help kind of the flow of the reporting, and if you'd like to see it any differently, let us know. We also started doing some quarterly comparisons that we'll continue to do on a quarterly basis. So we'll start on that again next month, because we did those 2 months ago. In addition, we met with the advertising committee last week. Brittany and I met with Ronnie and Tim to kind of go over current activity and also talk about budget for next year. Things that are working, things that we want to do more of or less of. So we kind of got some feedback on that as we're putting our budget together this year. One thing that I do need to do is I need to, Tom and I were talking before the meeting, I'll meet with the new staff members. We'll talk about new needs, things that we need to do now that they've had some changes in the department as well. We'll also be putting a release out on the new people that are coming in. I did want to point out the digital ads. We reduced the budget pretty significantly last month, and our ad performance was better than the month before, when we spent about a third more money. So we will continue to do that until it's not working. Most of the traffic to the website, like the outside traffic, correlates directly with who we're targeting. Advanced manufacturing, medical manufacturing, construction, some of those key target industries. And one thing that's interesting, I've mentioned to you guys about lead forensics. We are getting less leads off of medical manufacturing, but the ones that we're getting are very, very, very good. So we're kind of comparing all of that. We're sharing that data with the economic development staff so that they can follow up. So we're getting better at that and using that tool and working together on that. The Develop This podcast, Tom was on that one in May. We have 2 more coming up, so we're going to get together and talk about what those should be. We talked briefly about the next one being on workforce, and now that we have a new workforce person on staff, I think that that one will work well. We've added a few blogs to the website. We will continue that with the EcoDev 101 series. Focus right now is on BRE knowledge. We're doing less on the digital ads there, but more on the native content. I also mentioned, I think month before last, we had started the advertising with the native material. We have articles that we're basically pushing on the Associated Press. Those have done very, very well. We just started our second one last Monday, or actually this Monday, and it features Oryx. We're talking about security, location, and how when you have proprietary information, how this can be a very good location. So they were very kind and gave us another interview on that too. Other than that, we are updating collateral. We have a few things we're trying to go slowly with the new logos so that we weren't doing everything at once, but we have some industry-specific brochures that we talked to the committee about that we are updating. These were done years ago, and the way we're doing them now, they're going to be in digital format. So if they're needed for a prospect visit or anything, we'll print those as we need them, rather than printing 500 or 1,000 to sit on the shelf. Printing's just gotten so much easier to do that digitally. We'll just print as we need them. Other than that, we will be reporting on the social media numbers that Tom's group used to report on. So those are included in our report. Followers, engagements, things like that. We did mention that we were running ads on the facade grants. We did pause those ads just with the change in staff. Since we have new people handling, we thought we'd pause those just for a bit, and then we'll continue with those after that. But those are the high points to my report for the month.
Okay, you know, there's a piece in your condensed report that talks about economic development 101.
Yeah.
And the question I guess I would ask, what is your assessment of the ability of a local business to understand that there are programs that we offer through ODC in order to assist them with the expansion and creation of jobs? And is this part of the evolution of making that better? That's what I'm thinking.
It is. And I think even after all these years, there's so many people that just don't know. Our new approach to that is really to use local businesses who have received funding, use their experience, their quotes, the things that they received. I think more so it's real, because in the past we've done a bullet list. These are the things that a local business can receive, and we're putting the information out there, but I don't know that it is sinking in. So our approach to that is really to have these businesses talk about it, put those on the website, put some dollars behind those digitally to let people know, and we need to be doing more PR on it too. So I think as those things come up, I need to look for more opportunities to get the local press involved with that as well.
Okay, one other thing that I'm wondering, and it ties back into what we were talking about with Tom regarding our spreadsheet that goes back to day one that says, here's the jobs we've created, capital investment, and here's the grants that we've given out, grant dollars. I'm wondering if once the board reviews that again for the content, tweaks the content if we need to and whatnot, would it make some sense to have some kind of a perpetual ticker that says, you know, some way that if somebody accesses our website that shows, here's the jobs we've created, here's the capital investment we've created, and here's the grants that have been given out.
Yeah.
So that as we add new projects to it, it ratchets up. but it's always on there. Does that, I mean, would that make some sense to do that?
Absolutely,
or-
I think it makes sense. I think that would be very easy to add. We touch on parts of it, nothing that's in one spot.
Okay,
So I think that would be good. Years ago, there were ads done, I mean, probably a decade ago. We do an ad every once in a while that said, this is what ODC has done since, inception. But it's been a long time since we've even done that. But there's nothing right now on the website that does what you're talking about. And it's, quite frankly, once that spreadsheet's ready, it's a super easy ad.
okay.
So,
That's something that I think particularly our new council members, they really want to see what we do and how much we've done and how
I
long
agree.
we've been doing it. So we need to be able to articulate our successes better. And not just with Nick Fowler. I love Nick, but
I agree.
Orex and, everything that we've done in big ad form has been Nick or Robert Chavis. So there's a lot of mid-size companies
Sure.
that I think we could maybe, that people would relate to more than an Orex.
and we have all of that information. I think when I first started back, we did some surveys. I have some information we could pull from. We would probably just want to call them and update it before we used it, but we could certainly do that. I have a question, and I don't know if this is something that would be helpful, but would it be helpful for this board or even for you to review and then pass on to city council, kind of a one sheet of just the basics, some of the success stories, some of the things we just talked about, maybe a little bit more than just the spreadsheet? Would that be helpful, just to kind of put a one sheet together of things like that you could pass on that explains it a little bit more?
I think it's really important that we have some way, and you won't do that, but we need to do that, of reminding the city council how much of our money's committed. We've got that. Now we're keeping track of that, because even the mayor, I was in a meeting with him a couple of weeks, and he said, ODC's got $100 million they're sitting on. And I said, no.
No, we don't.
We don't.
No, we don't.
Right, because of the commitments.
But, if you just, I think there's just misconceptions, and so any way we could get little tidbits of good information. Yeah, Thomas was in that same meeting. But,
Well, and the other thing too is that Tom, we've talked about some type of a quarterly meeting with the council, and we probably need to schedule that sooner or later to get started. And my thoughts are that we say, here's the history, here's what our success. That one sheeter might be really helpful.
We put a few things together for Project Phoenix that kind of went through some history, some PowerPoint presentations, things like that. We have a lot of that. I think we could do that and update it to where you have it and it's simple, but I think the key is keeping it updated with all of the things that happen and adding to it. But I can make a note to at least be looking for those things to give you the tools you need to pass on.
That'd be great.
So,
that's just something else.
Okay, any additional questions for Christie? Thank you, Christie.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Walker, Black Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening to everybody. My report will be a lot shorter, a lot simpler and to the point, not as long as Tom's. And so we'll get straight to the point. And I've had promised to bring everybody tomatoes, but the storm beat the hell out of them. So I have no tomatoes left, so
You didn't bring us any salsa?
no salsa.
Gosh, that was gonna be one of the perks of this job.
So I promised tomatoes next go around. We just wanted to touch on that as you in our report, our numbers, for some reason, and thank God, they continue to increase. And I think it's out of curiosity. And a lot of, we're getting calls to the point that a lot of the stuff that's in our report is repetitious, but what we're starting to do now and what we're beginning to see is like in some of our counseling sessions. We're getting smaller businesses to the point that they're beginning to read some of our information about some of the grants, some of the funds that are available, and now they're trying to reach out to find out how is it possible that they qualify for these. As a matter of fact, I visited with Tom on yesterday to find out if this company were to purchase this property, are they in that general area? So we're running into things like that now, which makes me very happy. That means that the companies are finally beginning to, the little entrepreneurs, the small mom and pops, are finally beginning to read the information and see that this stuff is available for them as well. And that it applies to them also. And we let them know what companies that are not eligible and that do not qualify. But most of our calls now, we're getting calls from companies from Midland that, do you have an area downtown that I can put this? We do, as we do know, most of our stuff is landlocked, and it's you know, it's zoned for this and it's zoned for that. So we're hoping that we get to the point that we will open up a whole new avenue, that we will meet with some of these companies. As a matter of fact, we're with one company now to help them look at the sale of their company to another company that is a member. So they're going in-house with us to find out, and this is something we've never touched on before, but you know, we try to get in where we fit in. So this way, if it's creating jobs, if it's creating taxes, if it's creating revenue for the city, we're gonna try to do it. So this is something that we're running into. That is why a lot of our counseling sessions are up. We're meeting with small to companies with 1 and 2 employees. They're looking to the point, most of them are 1099s, and they're looking to the point that what can they do to bring them on permanently? What will it take? What will it take to the point before they can go before the ODC? Where do we stand? So we're helping them with their applications, we're helping them with their paperwork. So this is something that we're really excited about, that, you know, that some people are finally getting the information. It took a little bit, but, you know, and I guess the thing is, you know, letting them know that it's available and letting them know what's available. So, and we have our other stuff that we also do, which we're sponsoring some events. We have the Literacy Fair that is approaching, and then we'll have our, tomorrow as a matter of fact, we'll have our first annual Day of Fitness. We decided to do this because basically, so we wanted to do something to, you know, not get away from what we do, but include this also with, you know, with the chamber, because us being so small, we wanted to help reach out to, if we can help someone with their, as far as with their health and with their finances, that's great. So we also put them in touch with physicians, with doctors, with different organizations that can help them as far as their health and wellness as well. So we're doing some stuff that is very unconventional for us, but it's fun. It's a learning process, and we're really enjoying it. So we will also have our second annual bowling tournament, which this is where we give our scholarships. We have 8 recipients that we will give scholarships that will be attending everywhere from St. John's University to Texas Tech to Odessa College, as far as architects, nurses, culinary arts. So they were very, it was a variety. So it's been a very interesting month. I I hope this ride continues because, you know, being retired, I need to do something to keep me going, to keep me motivated. So, any questions on anything that we may have that you see in the report that, you know, that we could help you? Any questions? And I promise tomatoes and jalapenos next.
Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
We have the SBDC report in our package. Unless somebody has a question about that, we'll go on to Bertrand, James.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members, and Christie, this is a pretty good story here, so you'll want to use this one maybe for the one pager. We're going to talk a little bit today about Luke 338. There was a public hearing looking at the build out of Luke 338 in June of 2013. About Luke 338. There was a public hearing looking at the build out of Luke 338 in June of 2013, so 12 years ago. At that time, it fell off. I don't think I have to explain to you that the Texas Department of Transportation has never been overly anxious to spend an enormous amount of money out here. They did have some financial constraints, but we had a public hearing, the whole thing, and then boom, it went away. Flash forward to 2017, and that's when this group undertook your local leveraging program for the first time. And several of those projects, there are a couple that are not on Loop 338, but there were several of them that were on Loop 338. And we used that to parlay with the department about trying to move forward with the development of an actual loop in Odessa, Texas. At that time, this board had said, we'd like a loop that looks a little bit more like Loop 250 in Midland, something along those lines. So they started their study, and I'm going to throw this part in. They had a fairly extensive public participation program looking at all of the segments 1 through 6 here that you see on this first page. Based on that public participation, both in usage and what people thought the priorities should be, segment 1 was overwhelmingly the top priority, and that's from State Highway 191 back up around to US 385 North. That being said, last month we just completed another public hearing stage in which nobody commented or asked for any additional public hearings, so that's going to allow this process to move a lot faster on that overall project. Now, it did scale back a little bit. It's running from Yukon up to US 385, and part of the reason for that is because there's a separate set-aside project on 52nd, 56th that was done a long time ago and then got offset by Yukon. So this is essentially a full environmental and your essential basic schematics on everything from the finished Yukon intersection up to 385. And if you'll move to that next page, you'll see what that looks like. You're going from the existing 200-foot right-of-way with a 4-lane divided and shoulders to a 400-foot right-of-way that also has access roads along it and a 10-foot sidewalk on both sides. Just for the record, if any of you are curious, or I know you're all bigger people than this means that your loop will be bigger than Midland's loop by about 100 feet. But I know none of you care about that. So anyway, that's the process moving forward. All of the loop projects for development of the entire loop were actually included in the MTP at this point, which is our 40-year plan here. But what we're interested in the here and now, things that you can use to talk to the city council about things that you're getting done, are actually the UTP period, this 10-year period that we're in. Today in that 10-year period, the 87th interchange, which is another one that most recently, in the last year, y'all leveraged along with this overall freeway project. There are 2 that fall outside that. That's the Grandview and 100th Street interchanges, but you also leverage those. And what that's going to allow in this current UTP period, When you give money towards a state project, the state has to accept that. They accept that by incorporating into the UTP, which is a 10-year document. So you force those out of that 40-year program up into the 10-year program. And historically, as we've gone through this, there's also been some additional funding that's gone to those projects as well, which is another thing. You can talk about the additional money, but also moving these timeframes up. We anticipate those two projects will be in the UTP, and what that means is over the next 10 years, that segment will see about $279 million worth of investment, and pretty much a landmark corridor for Odessa that's going to allow a lot of additional development and commercial movement. So that's what we wanted to come talk to you about today and just give you that little update. Because there's not going to have to be another public hearing, what they'll do is finalize their environmental submission. They'll start working on detailed engineering for this project, which is about a 6 to 9 month process. But what that allows them to do is go ahead and start acquiring right-of-way. And frankly, we're far enough along the process, they could really start doing that if they wanted to. But we'll probably wait till this gets done here through the UTP revisions. And that'll be the next big thing, utility adjustments. But again, most of these projects are scheduled outside the two that we mentioned. So I think it's a big success for you and really a big step forward for looking at what Odessa is going to look like. If there's no questions, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a better chance for that. All right, Haley. Financials.
Okay, today we're going over March financials. You can both have one. We did complete our 23 audit, which includes the ODC audit. And I think in some of those adjusting journal entries, it threw a kink in our initial fund balance that we had rolled over. So I didn't want to go past March when I saw that because there is a small reconciliation issue in here that we just couldn't catch or figure out where it was. So I'll note that reconciliation issue and then we'll be sure to identify it before I prepare any more financials. Oh, this is not working. Okay. So there will be a lot of activity here in March because this is where we booked all of the agencies that we looked at together. So just to start on this balance sheet, the local government pools net of what needs to be transferred, or what is to be transferred to the city tax pool is $75,176,000. That line item underneath are all of the agencies that we purchased, and we'll see a breakdown of them on a later page. But that is the total there. $8,118,000. That's not the par value necessarily, so the face of what we bought it at, but what we show on here is the market value, the fair market value. The CDs and the CEDARs are at 4.5 as of the end of March. Money market is significantly reduced from prior balances because that's where the agencies were purchased out of. So it went down from 13 million and change last month to now 5.2 million. The interest receivable from muni bonds is actually the receivable interest from the agencies. They're not municipal bonds, but we put it in that category. So the total assets here are going to be $95,534,303. Down below, these are the updated balances on all of the incentive agreements. So 2.7 million in short term, 19.98 in long term. So total reserve, or rather let's just jump down to unreserved since you've already kind of talked about that number today. 54,839,000. So to your point, Peggy, whenever I do hear somebody say, you know, ODC's got, I usually have the number in my head from the last financial I prepared, so I will jump in and just say, actually, it's a lot closer to 50, 55, whatever it is. So we're working to clear up that narrative as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the fund balance on the balance sheet is going to show as 95,534,303. If you flip to the second page, you'll note that the fund balance at the end of the year, that very bottom line, we're going to look in the second column from the left, is 95,420,326. So that is where those numbers should match, right? And we just have to dig really deep to figure out why they're not, because we've tried all of the surface level solutions and none of those seem to be the answer. So we'll just dig down. It's about $113,000. It's not huge, but it is something that needs to be resolved as to why those aren't balancing. So for this month, collected in sales tax was $1.2 million. Interest income, which will include the interest on those agencies, is $392,000. This gain or loss on the investments is from the agencies as well, just the gain in the fair market value, $6,000. Down in expenditures, the largest expenditures this month were, of course, incentive agreements and capital infrastructure grants. The $927,000, 2 payments made to Wackeman for their capital infrastructure agreement, and the $226,000 was made to Glaciers. And I want to say that was their last payment.
For Glazers.
For Glazers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It sure was. So that incentive agreement has been paid out completely. Total expenditures for the month, $1,247,000. For the year, we're at $8,864,000. So we are operating at a net profit so far this year of $1.17 million. Another just positive thing to note on here, on the revenue piece up top, we're at 79% of budgeted revenues, and this is the 6-month mark, so that should be at 50 theoretically. So that is a good thing.
Where are you seeing that? Because I'm looking at the percentage, the total revenues.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a good thing. Of course, that the interest income has helped significantly. So, yeah, we're just gonna ride that wave as long as it'll let us. As long as the economy will let us. Under the encumbered reserved, those amounts listed under the incentives, the capital infrastructure, and the downtown infrastructure, just as a reminder, will total everything that is short-term, determined to be short-term. So on the next page, you can see out here specifically what we paid out and what we moved around. So top to bottom, the first change you'll see under the paid in current period is that Glaciers. So we no longer have any obligations for that incentive agreement. Further on down to Wackeman, we had a transfer in from the long term to the short term of $92,000, and that is to make up the total at the far right, $175,000 that we paid out in after March. I can't remember which month, but since I knew that payment had been paid out, I wanted to show it in short term. So there it is. I don't think I have any other comments on this page unless you have questions specifically about the agreements. Okay. The next page will show just a summary of the total liquid assets. Somewhat liquid anyway. So this is the actual balance here on that government pool line item. It's different, of course, from what's on the balance sheet because we net out what should go to the city tax pool. it's good though, cause while it sits there in your account, you get interest on it, so that is positive for you all. Down on the agency notes, that 8,112, this does show different from what's on the balance sheet, the 8,118, and that's because the fair market value adjustment sits in that column over where it says 51,000. It's just the total of the fair market value adjustment and the interest that we made. So that's why that math doesn't map automatically. And again, total ending balance for those agencies, 8.164. So balances are growing healthily.
And you're still working to get us these before the meeting, right?
Yes. I'm sorry. I was out of the country week before last, so last week was just a race to every deadline that happened the week before.
Thank you.
So, yes, ma'am. Okay, summary of the month here. Just to break down everything of where we started and where we ended. In our pools, we started at 84,792,000. We ended at 86,349,000. Very decent jump there. And you'll see the decrease rather, that I spoke of earlier in the money market, where we pulled out the funds to pay for those agencies. The CDs listed here. Thomas, we got the document signed after March 31st, so that's why Prosperity is not yet on here, but it should pop up in the month after. Okay, here down below in the municipal securities, that should say agencies. Those are not muni bonds, but you'll see the yield to maturity column. So they're all pretty healthy in the 4% range. Some of these bigger ones are locked in until 2027, so that's really good for ODC. I think we're going to get some good returns on those. You see some that are even locked into 28. So I think that all of the effort that the investment committee put in all of the time, I think those yielded some really good results. Any questions there? Okay, that's all I have for you. Oh,
I have one question.
Yes.
It's not on here. Would you facilitate sending all board members the 2024 general development plan as soon as possible? I would like for all the board to be able to review that, and at our first opportunity to discuss that during the budget period, that we can really focus on what do we need to tweak in that general development plan going forward. You know, what do we want to emphasize and whatnot. I think I can think of, do we want to place more emphasis on roads, infrastructure, and, you know, whatnot going forward? You know, which, if we do that, and how do we define it? You know, because it's going to have to be some type of a commercial road or highway, I think, for economic development purposes. And so that's just one. I mean, I'm just pulling that item out of the air. So I think one of the things that I'd like for everybody to focus on in that general development plan, anything that you want to suggest that we change, I mean, we're going to be open to do that. But where are we going to emphasize our work? What are we going to direct our contractors to work on differently than they have this past year and in years before? So if we'll get that out, and soon everybody will have plenty of time to look at it, make notes on it, and then when it's time for us to, and ask questions as well. When it's time for us to review that we're not doing that cold in any way, shape, or form, because I do think the economic development landscape is changed a little bit.
Is that something that we will be discussing in a work session? You know, we've talked about having a work session for a new board member, for all of us.
Well, I think there's a regular budget process that in the past, what we've done is we've minimized some of the regular agenda items and maximized the budget portion of it, which includes the general development plan. If the board feels like they'd like to have some type of a special meeting, work session, if you will, with regard to maybe even solely the general development plan, I mean, we can do that. But, so I guess I'm not gonna answer your question directly, but I think what I'd like to say is, once everybody gets their hands on it, then maybe I'll do some type of an informal poll that says, what do you think about a special meeting? Do we need to do that? Does that make sense? Because I want that to be the focal point that's driving our budget, which is what it should be.
Right.
And again, I think with all the new board members here, with all the new council, I mean, our emphasis on economic development may shift a little bit with regard to what are we trying to accomplish? Where are we going to apply our funds in the most efficient and effective way? So I think that's my intention. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I was just thinking, we had talked at one point about having a work session because we have so many new ODC board members, and an opportunity to ask questions that you're not gonna really ask necessarily, so when you said, think about what you'd like to do, that seems to be, lead to what can we do?
Right.
You know,
That's a good point.
what is it that we can do, and what would we like to do? And I just was wondering if those couldn't kind of be combined into a working session. Do you have any questions about ODC?
Not really.
Okay, Ronnie, you don't? Thomas, you don't?
Oh, I got questions every day.
I mean, we may not need a work session. I mean, I know Gavin does, but, I just thought because there were so many new people on here that we might not realize what we can and cannot do and what the options are for being something other than what we are.
Yeah, that's the human nature of the what can I do, what can I not do, so those questions came on early. And why can't we do it?
But I think to your point that it makes very good sense to ensure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
We may have differences of opinion, but we're understanding what the facts are, and we may suggest different strategies or different tactics, but, that's just part of the deal.
We did factor in on the budget calendar a special meeting. So that is usually the place, like David said, where we discuss the general development plan in detail, as well as the budget itself after we've received the contractor's proposals back. We'll look at those in depth. I'll provide a binder of all of the proposals ahead of time for you to look at. So there is a time set up for that. Now the first half of that, the what can we do, I would think would come before, but could come in that meeting, because there's nothing else to be discussed other than budget and proposals.
Peggy, why don't you and I commit to trying to figure that out as to what exactly we think we need to do to be most productive?
Okay.
We'll do that.
And then the other thing I was just gonna mention, I would like to get the 23 audit on the next board meeting.
I was gonna ask you, when are we gonna get to
We
see
would
that?
like for you to.
I can send it out to you, but I'll get it on the agenda for the next time so we can
Sounds great.
present it.
Good idea.
Thank you. And we're working on 24 already, so this is coming.
Okay, Odessa Partnership meets on June 24. Advertising committee, y'all met. Is there anything additional that you want to add?
No, Christie covered it very well. We were impressed with the fact that she reduced the budget, but still came out with a good result to what she was doing. And we're still, Tim and I both are under the belief that they're doing a really good job of what they're doing. They're really watching what's going on. And having the city of Odessa in their best interest.
Great. Compliance, Peggy? Do you have anything?
We met, and talked about the matrix, and then got some ideas, and then you're gonna meet again, I think on the 26th, maybe? And I think Brian's got a good handle on it. We have a really good compliance committee. I think they're very interested, so. I know we've got some projects here to talk about, but in terms of compliance as a whole, I haven't seen a notice for a meeting on projects this month, only for the matrix.
That is correct, so
Yeah.
far.
Excellent. Okay, investment review, Thomas and I and Kaylee probably should meet sometime before this budget process. I don't think it'd be lengthy, but we probably need to visit that, revisit some of those issues in anticipation of those questions coming up during the budget process. So I'll try to work to schedule something there. So item 8, discuss the resolution affirming project compliance for border states industries. Tom?
Yes, I will remind the board that when staff comes up and presents a compliance report, that means there were no issues. If Brian comes up and presents it, that means our auditor came back with some issues and the compliance committee had to view that and potentially make a recommendation on how the ODC board may want to deal with it. But I will mention to you with border states, they entered into an EDA in August of 2023. The total amount to incentivize their project was $970,660. And so this is their first compliance report. You'll see down on the bottom of after the cover page, at the bottom of the first page under procedures performed and results, they met all the required procedures and results as far as their commitment to new hires and existing hires, wages and so forth. The next page you will see under their employees, they were required to have 26 FTEs at the end of the period. They currently have 32, so they've gone above and beyond, which is great. And then on new hires, required to have 2, and they did 6. And so that's why they're a little above what they projected, which is a good thing. There were no issues identified from the auditor, and so the recommendation is for them to receive their first payment, which would be $194,132. And if you've not seen their building, they built they completely moved out of their building on Golder and built an entirely new facility down on, I think it's off Murphy. But it's a real nice building. They were in a metal building. Now they've, it's been a while since I've been by there, but it's like concrete tilt. But it's a very nice building. And we've already, which y'all passed that a while back on a different project. We've already got another business that came in and purchased their old building. IDI, International Distributors, Inc., and they're renovating that, I believe, as we speak, if they're not finished already. So.
Yeah, and this was almost $2 million for construction and land.
Yeah, yeah, it's a nice building. They certainly did a good job.
Who does the compliance monitoring report?
Whitley Penn.
They didn't sign it. I didn't see their name on here.
Well, what we do initially, we bring a draft to y'all. And then if it passes, we go back and email them and say that the board passed the report, and then they send a final full deal with their cover and signatures and everything.
Okay, I just wondered who was doing it.
Any other questions?
I move we pay them their payment.
Second.
A motion is second to approve the report and the payment. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, Tom. The
Apergy Champion X. When this project first came before y'all, it was Apergy, and then Champion X out of the Woodlands purchased them. I think Champion X about a year ago got purchased themselves, but they're still using the Champion X name. but this would be a fourth payment. The agreement was from 2020, and it's a scaling down deal. Not every year was the same amount. I believe the first one was like 400, then it went to two annual payments of 200 each year, 200,000, and then the final two payments are 100,000. This is the fourth, so they'll have one more after this, but this one, they've met all the requirements. Insurance coverage, FTEs, you'll see similar deal down at the bottom of the first page of the draft after the cover page, where they met everything. And then over on employees, this one, they were required in the agreement to have 107 employees. They've got 204, so they did well. And then on new hires, they were required to do 20, and here's where they really got the bump, is they did 74. So that's a lot of new jobs for the area. Like I
That's where
said,
we got the buck, because we're paying them based on what they projected, right?
yeah.
I mean,
So
this is great.
It is.
good project, and so the recommendation is to make the fourth payment in the amount of $100,000 for this one.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the report and the payment. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Further down with Project Whiptail, I would request that y'all consider tabling that because there's some back and forth on the information I was going to present you, and I'm not prepared tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, item number 10, American Safety Services.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of the Compliance Committee, we have a recommendation based upon information from Company American Safety Services with that location here off of I-20 in Odessa. Company came to us, I guess a little bit background, American Safety, I had to do a little bit deep dive into because the safety is just part of what they do. Well-diversified company. Dealing with everything from, of course, safety, but also construction, roustabout services, I believe, vacuum services, jet pumps, all sorts of rental equipment. The company came to us looking to make renovations, I think specifically for a training center and other capital equipment that they plan on adding to the existing facility there on I-20. Compliance Committee met with on this Project SAFE for American Safety back in April, so we get to present this here today. Based upon the review of 3 years worth of financial data that was available to us at the time and kind of the scope of the proposal, based upon the number of jobs that we look to retain, and also I think they're looking to add a large number of jobs as well as part of this training facility. It was a recommendation from the committee that the overall spend for this project was the $1,312,116 that would be spread across 5 years for equal payments of $262,423.20, assuming that the company met the projections that they had sent over to us. Quick overview of the company. We're happy to entertain any questions or comments that you all may have about what's being presented.
And this is a minimum of 173 retained full-time jobs, and then
The 82
82
is what they project for the
new
additional.
jobs. Anybody have any questions?
Are these the same guys out on Andrews Highway also?
Yeah.
Yeah, same people. The facility, what exactly, are they gonna build a new building out there, or their current facility used to be Salisbury, do they own that facility, or are they renting it?
That, I do not recall that information in the packet. I'd have to go back and take a quick review of, you know, this did go through compliance in April, so some of these details we need to revisit, but good question. I don't know if you,
The big one that Nick Salisbury ended up,
I
is
think
gonna be
they bought it,
Salisbury, and
but
Salisbury bought
I'd
it.
have to go back and
Salisbury
confirm that.
or something now.
Say again, Tom?
I said, I think they purchased the Salisbury facility, but I'd have to go back and confirm it, kind of Brian, it was back in April and I slept. But we can get that information pretty easily.
Yeah,
So-
I'd like to know that.
So they're gonna spend $1.1 million on improving that building?
yeah, I think the $1.1 million would be improvements upon the building and also capital equipment. I think they were gonna specific safety training devices. I think there was, I can remember, I do believe there was some lifting equipment they were gonna purchase and some other capital type of items. I think that's all gonna be included in that 1.1 million.
So we're gonna fund more than they spend?
Based upon the capital and also the additional jobs is what we took into consideration.
There's 3 grants involved: retention, new jobs, and CapEx. And CapEx is actually the lowest amount.
Yeah, so when you went through the matrix, the jobs creation was the lion's share of the grant?
Yes, the job creation was by far the largest portion of that, followed by the job retention, and then followed by the capital investment. Was a methodology that we used.
So it's kind of coincidental, I guess. I
And
would say.
that's created a lot of discussion in the past whenever we were gonna fund more than what they're gonna spend. But the value of the jobs is the biggest.
Are they trying to build more facility as well with this money, or are they just gonna update what they have? I mean, how are they gonna support the 170 jobs with their current space?
Yeah, from my understanding, it's going to be a renovation of a large. I mean, this training center is going to be quite large, to where they plan on hosting outside groups to come in, to where they're going to be having training sessions with outside companies and their representatives. Is the understanding that I had after reviewing the project.
I think, I guess what I was trying to say when I said it's, the number's coincidental to what they're spending on their renovation. I think that my impression is that when it goes through the compliance committee, regardless of whether they get this grant or not, they can go forward and get it done. They have the financial capacity to do it, and they're gonna be creating the jobs. We're basically providing them a grant for the most part to create the jobs.
That was,
That makes sense.
yeah, the biggest focus of our discussion and compliance was on the job creation. And that's, again, that's kind of what Peggy mentioned in her overview of our last meeting. We're focusing in on what that matrix looks like. So that's been the guide. I believe the last update we've had on that matrix was 2018, if I remember correctly. So we're hoping to get that updated to maybe add some balance to the categories as we consider them, but this is the metrics that we have in front of us at the moment.
So Ronnie, did you have additional information that you'd like to have on this before we?
Well, I'm looking at the office headquarters and seeing something, that's not a really old facility, and that sure looks like, some of these line items look like a lot of money for something. And I don't see it, I don't see the blueprints and all that stuff, so I mean, I know pretty much what oil field safety looks like and some of the stuff. So I would wanna see a little bit more information on what kind of equipment they're gonna purchase.
Okay.
I'm all for everything, I'm all for everybody giving a job, but we are experiencing downturn in the oil patch. You don't really need to do anything but drive around. There's houses empty every day, for sale signs, and nothing against these guys either, but, it may not be the right time. Timing's everything.
Absolutely.
This is
That
one too,
makes
that it
sense.
might be helpful to maybe give 5 years of financials, because this company's been up and down over the years.
Yeah, like I said, we had a 3-year window, so we have not gone back in time to take a look at what the greater picture looks like, so we'd be happy to do that if that's the direction that you all give us.
Well, like Peggy said, up and down, if you're in the oil and gas industry, you better hang on, because you can be rich one day and broke your neck. So, we understand that part.
In further response to Ronnie's statement, we which I can't disagree with, but I will remind y'all, you know, that's why you do your compliance and you pay in arrears. So if you know, if they hit a downtime and they don't make their requirements, you're not gonna make a payment.
Yeah.
The dilemma would be that after the end of year 3, they fold the company up. So in effect, I mean, you paid for the jobs for the 3-year period, but you're actually, your incentive is for jobs, you know, far into the future. I mean, not just during the performance time. I know that's what our limitation is, but the counter to that would be, and that's, it's a good point because that's the reason we pay in arrears, but if the company folds after 3 years, then you don't get any benefit of those jobs going forward.
Yeah,
So-
you would, yeah.
Well, also thinking back on that, when Sanders built that building, and they had their issues, and they stopped, and I think Salisbury actually taken that building. So, in defense of them, maybe part of that building may not be finished, it may have never been finished out, and that may be the case.
Yeah, like I said, I think that'd be something that would warrant probably, if we need to,
Yeah.
if this comes back to us, we would, you know, revisit that.
I would ask that, is this for renovation or was that building ever finished? And that's maybe not irrelevant, or maybe relevant, but.
I would entertain a motion to table this and send it back to the compliance committee for additional information.
Please.
That's a motion and a second to table and get additional information. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian, appreciate your work. All right, and we want to, I would entertain a motion to table item number 11.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second to table item number 11, which would be going into executive session. All those in favor signify by aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Upcoming board meeting is July the 10th. The next board meeting, July the 10th. I wanted to make sure we don't have anything, yeah. And then that ODC special meeting, I would just note that is July the 31st. So sometime in between there, we'll figure out how we want to handle that. Peggy and I'll put our heads together and get that done. Any problems with the date? Next meeting? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
No second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thanks, everybody.
See you later.